knees ached, and her ankles were swollen from a full day's work. She was in the prime of her life, but she felt like every part of her had been wrung out like a dish rag, and her hopes and dreams had splattered on the tile, nobody but her to mop the mess. Why did she always have to clean up the mess? That was a peculiar loneliness, when life lay on the floor and you were the only one to clean it. She didn't have the energy. It had left with her husband, just flown like a bird carried off by a strong wind. When the door banged against the hollow closet, Barbara took a step inside and scanned the living room. Perhaps Janet's suitcase would be there, her jacket on the back of the couch. Janet holding the baby and walking the hall from the back bedroom. She saw none of that. She heard no baby's cry. The room was no different from when she'd stepped out. Cold, empty, and silent. She put down her purse and keys and closed the door, then checked Janet's room. The bed was just as Barbara had left it that morning, made but empty. Her granddaughter's crib sat in the corner, also empty. The sight of it sent an ache deep into her soul. Where had Janet and Hannah gone? Of course, Barbara knew, not the exact location, but she knew who they were with. Barbara had driven to the man's old apartment on the other side of town, but his car wasn't there, and there was no answer at the door. She'd called his work, but they said he had quit. Nobody knew where he was. Another closed door, another dead end. After Hannah's birth, there'd been a honeymoon period when Janet seemed buoyed by this new life. There was something about a baby in the house, even those wailing cries at 3 a.m., that told Barbara things would be okay, that though the world seemed like it had spun out of control, there was always a chance for life. She'd heard that a baby's cry was God's way of telling the world that he still had a plan. Now, standing in that empty room, she wondered if God's planning was off. Maybe he'd forgotten her prayers, or hadn't heard them to begin with. And then the terrifying thought came, maybe God wasn't there at all. Months earlier, Janet had returned home penitent, deeply sorry for her mistakes and the trouble she had brought her mother. Barbara was glad Janet hadn't decided to end the child's life in the womb. She'd preached to her daughter that life was sacred and no child was a mistake. So they had walked through the last months of her pregnancy together, drawing a little closer each day, fixing up the back bedroom with the crib Barbara had found at a garage sale. She'd mended the broken slat on the rocking chair her own mother had used when Barbara was a baby. Oh, the worn arms on that chair and the memories it brought when she put her hand there. Then, 2 months ago, Janet and Hannah left while Barbara was at work. No note, no phone call, nothing. Just disappeared into thin air. And every day she came home hoping to hear the sound of that child. Barbara wandered to the kitchen and noticed the red light blinking, the answering machine. Her heart fluttered as she hit the button and heard the computerized voice. You have one message. Why couldn't the machine just play it instead of telling her how many there were and what time it came in? She just wanted to hear it. That inner pang hit again. If she heard Janet's voice and knew she was okay and that little Hannah was all right, that would be enough. That would be the answer to her prayers. It would be like hope walking through the door. It would let her know that she hadn't asked too much of God. Mrs. Scott, this is Cindy Burgess at Franklin General. The hospital. Why was the hospital calling? We have an emergency here and need you to come down right away, ma'am. When you get this message, please call. My number is... Emergency? The doorbell rang and she couldn't process the sound. She lifted her arm as if she could get the person to go away with just a wave.